Hello and welcome to another episode of Scions of the Southland. My name is Akshay Ishwarn, and joining me is a man who loves all-star games in his city, Mr. Jake Grant. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm fine. It's been quite a day. Beautiful day in Atlanta too.
Oh, yes. It has been a very good weather weekend to host the All-Star game and not totally full of incidents around town, for sure.
Yeah. It was definitely a busy weekend on Flight Radar above Midtown, but
It happens when you're apparently the basketball capital of the world for a weekend. Who knows?
I mean, as much as I would love to believe that Atlanta is the basketball capital of the world, both Madison Square Garden and Candace Parker's press conference describe other cities as those, but we don't have to get into that on this
Well,
podcast.
I'm curious as to who Candace Parker named as basketball capital of the world.
Sir, if I'm mentioning it, you already know the answer of what I'm going to say next.
Oh boy. Oh. Okay, we're not going there. We do have a lot to get to today. Um, some of them are short updates, some of them are long. I just watched Texas completely blow a dunk on national television, which was cool. So how about we get started and see what we can get to today?
Yeah, let's rock and roll.
All right, our usual 30 minutes on the clock, and here we go. Let's start with track, field, and cross country, since all three of those sports, question mark, are effectively the same thing. The women's track and field team scored an NCAA berth earlier today. Thoughts?
Yeah, track is definitely been interesting. We've been kind of sitting on the cross country invite since the fall, since they pushed that back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of been the highlight of the program. If you look at a lot of our success, both on the men's and women's side in the indoor track season, Nicole Fegans, Andrew Kent will be heading to indoor track NCAAs, but the women's cross country team as a whole has been top 15 this entire spring after getting second in the conference to North Carolina State in the fall. So it wasn't unlike 2018 when it was a pretty big, or was it 2018 or 19? I don't know. Time all runs
Time
together. I think.
time is just
Hmm.
fluid at this point.
Yeah. Anyways, the year we got 30th, I was football chair, so I think that was 2018 then. Anyways, 2019, 2018, whatever it was, we kind of snuck into the NCAA field up in Madison. It was very chilly, etc. But now this is the, I think, high water mark of cross country in terms of how old they are. But we had a solid year. I don't think we have the depth to go number one overall. NC State kind of blew the doors off of us in the ACCs, but a solid top 20 program, and they will definitely get their chance to prove it now. And we look forward to that.
All right, let's slip over to the waterborne track and talk about swimming's NCAA berth, specifically on the women's side. Diving is still in progress today. I believe it's the Zone B Championships. And we did see Cameron Hidalgo notch an NCAA berth there. But you have some news on the normal swimming front, don't you?
Yeah. So as we've kind of alluded to last week, NCAAs are weird. But the ladies, after having actually more than usual off their team, and again, I know it's a little bit hard to say a team that finished their best ever finished ninth in the conference, and you really hear a ton about them saying that it's like their best year ever. But sending two individuals to NCAAs on the women's side is definitely more than it's kind of punching above our typical weight. And they're both sophomores, Mackenzie Campbell and Brooke Schweitzer. They'll be going back to Greensboro for that. I believe Campbell is in the 400 IM and 200 fly. When I wrote it down on our notes, I halved both of those. Her 400 IM time is quite good. And then Brooke Schweitzer will be in the 200 free. All those times are in the top 35 in the country, so not necessarily expecting to see them score points. But hey, maybe they'll taper hard and we'll collect at least I guess a point, 2, 3. You can't really get a lot when you don't have relays. So
we'll see. Like I said, Cameron Hidalgo will also be representing Georgia Tech on the diving side. I didn't see any news of like official men's entries today.
I believe those are. I think that's delayed a week on the timeline, kind of like women's basketball, men's basketball are offset a week to kind of like separate the hype. This is the same way for NCAAs. Usually, I shouldn't say usually. Often they're hosted by the same facility, and you can't host that many athletes even in normal times for that high profile to meet back to back on the same days. So to space that out, they usually offset them a week. So I think next week we can kind of expect to see that. But we will be able to see Ruben Lechuga. He's our male diver at zones, possibly qualifying this week, notching his name to the several we know who are actually already going. So unlike the women where it was kind of like a, will we get anybody question mark? It was, we're sending at least 4 or 5 guys to NCAAs in the men's. So the women will, I guess I shouldn't say they won't be alone because the men are going to Iowa City, but they'll be there in spirit in Greensboro this coming, I think it's next week that they'll be up there. So, yeah.
Time, location, geography, what is it really?
The words all run together at some point, man. I'll tell you that.
On the space-time continuum, it's all the same. It's all the same. Moving right along to both tennis programs. Bit of a mixed bag. The women's program went up to Wake Forest and got swept, but then battled back to beat number 11 NC State. And then the men's program took their talents to Clemson, notched a win there, and then came back home and swept Georgia Southern. Thoughts here?
Yeah, so we had the women and the men in action this weekend. The women actually got a nice win today. Like it's hard to get the Wake Forest loss in there, mostly because our women are generally better across the board than Wake. But in terms of if you're going to drop one, they notched quite a nice win to make up for it. They won doubles this morning and then collected 3 singles wins, I believe, in order to round out the day. NC State is a program that we've had quite a bit of success against over the years. I believe we are 35 for our last 36 against them. So, yeah, it's not often you can say that you have that kind of a streak or record going against them. But doubles took care of business. They were leading on the third court that got suspended when the point was won. Kenya won. Vicky Flores defeated number 23, Alana Smith, in an interesting court choice by the NC State coach. Ava Rostar got 6-0, 6-1. She was up against a tough seed as well. And then Carol Lee got the 4th point down on court 6 to decide the game. So,
yeah. How about over on the men's side? We talked. I sort of led with, they went up to Clemson and notched that win, a 4-1 win, and then they came home and swept Georgia Southern. So
yeah.
what is sort of the temperature of this program, especially when compared to the women and the work that they're doing?
Well, the women have more high-profile wins this year. They haven't been quite as consistent. They probably have more of existing success to build off of. Kenya Jones was around. Vicky Flores was around for their last big run. But the men, if you didn't notice this week, the ITA rankings expanded from 25 to 50 for the halfway point of the season, or roughly halfway point of the season. And men's tennis was actually ranked 44th on those rankings. So not too far. Not a top 25 team by any means, but it's good to see them at least in the mix, in the conversation, and adding 2 wins. Clemson, generally a team that we've been able to handle over the years, but Georgia Southern, the men have really, really done a good job of cleaning up against teams that, quite frankly, aren't even in anywhere close to their stratosphere, but knocking out Southern State, Kennesaw State. Trying to think, we had another kind of
Georgia
bloodbath
State.
match. It was a doubleheader against Kennesaw. I think we 14-0'd Kennesaw. But no, if you want to get anywhere close to an NCAA berth, and we are still probably kicking around the outside of that, not on the outside looking in by any means. You have to clean up there. And Clemson, that's a win we can take. All these other ones are nice wins to take. Auburn, that was a nice one to have. But we will kind of have to see how exactly it plays out for them. But 7-5, looking at a winning record, at least for the time being, is nice.
Especially at the midpoint of the season. It's a nice place to be.
Yeah, the meat of the schedule left is the ACC season. This is where you kind of have to start to prove it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, speaking of proving it, we have both basketball programs next up. Which one do you want to start with? Because both of them had very interesting weeks.
Yeah, just the one that's fresher and the one that I think we should probably talk about first is women's basketball, just because they are kind of at a more, I guess, not final, because obviously they're going to be playing in the NCAA tournament, as we'll break down.
Their situation is less dynamic.
Yes, exactly. Their regular and ACC seasons are donezo.
So to set the table here, women's basketball, they beat Pitt to end their ACC regular season. They beat Clemson by a hair in the quarterfinal. They ended the season as a 3 seed. They automatically advanced to the quarterfinal with the double bye. And then they came within, honestly, just about 2 or 5 minutes of beating NC State, who went on to win the ACC tournament title. That puts them, according to Charlie Cream and ESPN, right around a 6 seed in Texas A&M's region, and they'd start out playing 11 seed Mississippi State. So that's what the table stakes are right now for Georgia Tech women's basketball.
Yeah, I think it's real kind of a relief to be staring at the end of the regular and ACC tournament season, just because even for like the last 3, 4, 5 weeks, it's not been a certainty, but an expectation that this team goes dancing. So for them to be at the point we kind of all expected them to be is, I don't want to say unsatisfying, but it's definitely been, they rattled off 7, 8 straight wins, something like that in the heart of the year. And since that point, I think they're 4-5, maybe 4-6.
It's definitely tailed off. I
Yes.
think someone on Twitter said it best, and this isn't necessarily a disparaging comment towards the women's program, but it's in the middle of February, they were playing like a Sweet 16 bound team, like they could beat anyone any given day. And then you take you see that those losses to Boston College and to UNC, especially sort of the fashion that both of those losses were in, and you start thinking, what is the ceiling for the season? I think is the thought that sort of crept in everyone's minds, because if you're putting together performances like that against obviously weaker competition, obviously you're on shorter rest, but that's the same way that the tournament works. What is really the ceiling of this program in a 64 team bracket?
I mean, I don't think the ceiling changes. I think, well, my slightly ridiculous theory as to what happened is that Georgia Tech can only have so much happiness. And
I don't think that's ridiculous at all. I 100% agree with you. Don't get me wrong.
The women used up their portion of the happiness, and then they said, all right, men, it's your turn to have some happiness. Here's your win streak. Go take it.
It's all on a budget.
It's the exact same reason that softball has been rather questionable since the baseball season started. Baseball went, all right, guys, all right, ladies, it's our turn. We have the luck for a while now. Call us when you need it.
Boy.
Which that's terrible sporting breakdown, and that's not why you guys listen to this podcast, so we're not just going to leave it at that. The women, they finally played, and we talked about this a little last week, they finally got caught up with 4 months of the grind of an ACC schedule on essentially 7, sometimes 8 players for the most part. with what due to injuries, due to opt-outs and the like, and having to play 1 game, 3 game, 1 game, 3 game instead of that nice even cadence of 2, 2, 2. That's hard for even a more rounded out 9, 10, 11 player roster, and kind of by design, like I'd rather them have gotten to the point where not it was an inevitability, but to where a tournament bid seemed comfortable. And yes, you want to be the hot team going into March, but this team has proven they can win. They can hang with NC State. They beat not the same NC State team last year, but a very similar one in their home gym. We hung with them for 45 minutes. They're not 45, 35 minutes. I don't know. I feel like I'm excusing a lot of stuff away, but second season, 0-0. They haven't been to the tournament in 7 years. I mean, you can't.
2012. It's almost a decade.
So it's 9 years. I thought it was 2014 in my head. My bad.
I don't know. We've flip-flopped on this date multiple times and gotten it wrong, 50% of the time, really. So pick one. My
head's too full of heat transfer these days. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Just to be there in Coach Fortner's second season, and you and I and the rest of the Rumble Seat Slack needs to eat a fair bit of public crow. So count us as this doing that. Coach Nell Fortner has outperformed my expectations in the first 2 years. Not saying it won't be disappointing if we lose in the first round or lose in the second round. I think there's on some level, some implicit level, not an expectation, but at least a possibility of that happening.
It's the hope. That's the hope that kills you. It's always the hope that kills you.
But no, projected to be up against Mississippi State. That is a program that has seen some pretty high highs, them in South Carolina over the SEC over the last few years. We won't talk about any other programs in Knoxville or Athens. They can
definitely won't.
No, none. It's South Carolina and it's Mississippi State. Beautiful Starkville. I got a YouTube ad for that today. I didn't know they had YouTube in Starkville. But a lot of these programs we're going to be getting someone. And women's basketball, maybe we might get lucky, get an AQ in the first round. I'm not going to hold out hope for that. It's going to be a slog until they tell us we're not playing again the next day. So,
yeah, I mean, you're still playing on short rest when you're talking about the tournament. My thing is, how do you sort of juxtapose those short rest performances in ACC play with the same format existing in the tournament, right? I think there is some data we can use, but also maybe you can say, hey, they've been playing tougher opponents on those short rest games sometimes. I don't know. I think there is some merit to a concern, I think.
The worst you're going to get in a tournament is 2 games in a week. You play Thursday, you play Saturday, or you play Friday, you play Sunday, or you play Friday, Saturday, you play Thursday, Sunday. However it shakes out, you are not going to be playing the same, all right, you have 4 games in 8 days.
That sucked.
That did suck, and that hurt us, especially with Sarah Bates on the shelf. And you can't have a 30-point performance from Loda Mailatin every night. You can't have.
She tried though. She sure tried.
You tried. So did Loyal McQueen. These girls are fighters, and that's why you can't count them out. It's because until that final whistle blows, we saw it in the Clemson game too, right? Not the ACC tournament one, but the one where we were down 9 with what? Under 2 minutes to play?
Something stupid like a minute or a half minute left.
In my head, it was 69 seconds, but that's probably wrong and just me trying to meme.
Nice.
But, the Jackets aren't out until that final whistle blows. And you know what? Thursday, Saturday looks a whole lot different than Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. And I will take the 2 games in 3 days versus and even in this tournament, you want to put out ACC short rest. We took the number 3 team in the country down to the last 3 minutes of the game. Granted, we kind of fell apart in the fourth quarter, but you're not going to be facing a situation quite that dire when you're over in San Antonio. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's pivot over to the men's side again, setting the table here. I have in my show notes, LOL, fourth seed in the ACC on 6-game win streak. What is life? I think that about sums it up.
We've counted this team dead after 2 bad wins to start the season. We counted them dead after that banked-in prayer of a buzzer beater at Clemson, but they won't die. They won't go away.
They're the knight from Monty Python that just says 'tis a flesh wound when he's missing arms and legs.
Hey, we are 9 games. We are 9 wins away from a national title right now.
Don't you do that to me. Don't you do that to me.
But they could do it.
I don't know.
We'll just put that idea in your head. I'm not a bad person. I won't say I regret that at all. We can beat Virginia. We can beat Clemson. We've beaten FSU. Virginia Tech is a bunch of phonies. Look it up. All their wins are against Garbo ACC teams or at home. And so don't at me on that. But there's no one in this conference that we can't take.
Okay, so I'm giving you one opportunity to hedge your statement that Georgia Tech will win the ACC tournament, because I don't want someone to clip this and use it as a soundbite on their bulletin board. I'm giving you one chance.
Maybe I want Pastner to use this as a soundbite on our bulletin board.
The reverse psychology here is astounding.
Listen, I'm not saying it's going to happen or it will happen or even that I think it'll happen, but it very much could, and you cannot count out that possibility. For the first time in either of our Tech fandoms, and probably a decent portion of the people that listen to this podcast, that you can say we have at least somewhat decent odds of winning the conference tournament.
Yeah, I think it's like 12.5%?
Yeah, it's quite good. We have 100% chance of making the quarterfinals.
Thank you, by the way, to Louisville for absolutely. I don't even know what a good metaphor is for what they did versus UVA, but they did that, and UVA beat them. So, thank you, Louisville, for multiple wins this weekend.
Honestly, after that Monday game where we had to go into their place and they hadn't played in 2 weeks, and that was our second game in 36 hours and all that nonsense, they kind of owed us one, I think.
Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah. But no, the Georgia Tech men's basketball team in their 6-game win streak, it's not like they're playing, half teams and cardboard cutouts. They knocked 2 solid teams off the bubble. They beat a meh Wake Forest team. They destroyed a very meh Miami team. They beat a ranked Virginia Tech team, a team we have struggled with in the past, in their own building on a weeknight. So, the biggest road win in ACC program history. Those six games weren't flukes, is what I'm trying to say.
No, I agree, and I think it's sort of. You can also say it's some of those earlier results that we've been complaining about, right? So the Duke game in Durham, the 2 Virginia games, et cetera, et cetera. So it's sort of like regressing to the mean in a way. That's kind of the way that I think.
Way higher than we've been playing.
Progressing to the mean instead of regressing. Progressing.
Yeah, let's go with that.
But it's a reset to the mean is my point. I think you're right in that the quality of the team is not necessarily reflective of dropping those close games. It's much closer to they were 50-50 games effectively, right? So you're just flipping the other side of the coin, and you almost beat Virginia to start off this right before this win streak, and you did beat Duke in the reverse fixture. So almost literally 50-50 coin flips going the other way.
Yeah. A note I want to share is at 11-6. I believe that puts us at right about a 6.47 win percentage. This will be the highest ranked Georgia Tech team to never have appeared in the AP poll, or the highest win percentage team to have never appeared in the AP poll.
Yeah, I don't know what to think about that. It's been a weird year.
The teams of equal magnitude that we've had in the past, they've been able to. Sorry, that's in conference is the 11-16. My bad. But the point is, a team with that winning percentage in the ACC for Georgia Tech has always gotten votes. It has received a lot more, and I guess they've gotten their press now. But in order to get the good press, this team had to fall on a lot of swords. Some of them justifiable, but some of them, in my humble opinion, not justifiable.
There's a lot of caveats that you can put on this season for Georgia Tech, but honestly, I think, let the good times roll in this case.
Yes. I'm a firm believer in fun. These guys are fun. They're enjoying themselves. They're winning. They like their coach. The staff is, developed players great.
There's an entire offseason to poke holes, is what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. As somebody who defaults to not defaults, but can sometimes too easily be like, it could be better. Why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do that? Wait till I get to the Louisville part of the baseball section. We go to the we coulda, woulda, shoulda. This is the first time we've been dancing in 11 years for a program that considers itself a at least respectable basketball school. This is and should be fun and enjoyable, so enjoy it while it lasts. We're going to see them play at least 2 more games, and when's the last time that we've been able to say that?
When's the last time you saw Duke playing on day 1 of the ACC tournament? That's what I want to talk about.
Literally, I don't think in my entire basketball fandom I've ever seen that happen. So
I don't think you've seen that in your lifetime. There's like an acute possibility that it may never have happened in your lifetime.
It almost certainly predates the 15-team field, which is, I guess, only 7 or 8 years old. But
that's something to dig into. Anyway, the current tourney projection for men's basketball, they're in the last 4 byes. Joe Lunardi has them as an 11 seed in Michigan's region, and they would play Wisconsin first. Scotty lost to Iowa earlier today. I think they lost. I didn't actually look at the score while I was watching that game. Moving on to volleyball, which surprisingly does have a spring season and a spring schedule. They played Virginia in Pittsburgh because the ACC is doing this whole pods configuration deal, and they swept the Cavs, and then they will play Pitt at 5 tomorrow. So they're still ranked 18th in the country now that all the teams and all the conferences are back in play. How do we feel after this opening salvo in the spring season?
Yeah. A note on the rankings before we dive into this, but they were up to as high as 16 2 weeks ago after playing no games in the last 4 months.
And that's not to say that other teams haven't been playing games. Like the rest of the country, including ACC programs, have been playing games.
Oh, yeah.
Tech is just not.
Yep. But during the middle of set 1, Virginia, if you guys don't know, and I wouldn't expect you to remember 2019 volleyball off the top of your head, Virginia's not very good. So the fact that we were going into some bonus volleyball had kind of Miami written all over it. If you remember,
questionable
from the fall, you don't want to drop games, sets, points, even to teams that, quite frankly, shouldn't even be on the same court as you. This is a better program.
You're firing off a lot of very hot takes that could eventually come back to bite you.
Akshay, as my good swim club friends say, this is the podcast for the hottest takes about the sports that people slightly care about. Which, we could spend more time on football and basketball, but we choose to be liberal with our spreading of attention. Anyways, volleyball. Virginia, not good. They did wind up pulling out the first set. They went on a nice little run, but did not put it away. It wound up being 29-27 at the end of the first. Virginia, I don't think scored 25 points combined the rest of the way. I'm going to fact check that because if that's true, it is definitely going to move.
I think they went 7-10 the last two sets.
Yeah, either way.
It was not close. The last two sets were not close.
Yeah. They've won 26 of their last 28 matches dating back to Pittsburgh 2019. Wait, no, that includes Pittsburgh 2019. They've only lost one game since the last time they played Pitt.
Time, it is a flat circle.
Yeah. Also, Virginia did go 12-18, so they did sum enough to win a complete set across two sets. But no, Virginia was 2-9 and 0-9 in the ACC coming into this match. They played basically everyone on the roster trying to get something that worked. Tech out hit in the second and third set by a decent margin, including a 448-143 margin in the second. They were barely out hit in the first, but they kind of clawed themselves back in and took the lead when they started being effective on the attack. And if there's one thing that Georgia Tech does incredibly well, it is the Michaela Dowd, Julia Bergman, Mariana Brambilla outside hitter trio. That is how they make their bread and butter.
Yeah, I will also note, I think a couple of freshmen were in the rotation today. I think at least one started because there was one name on the sheet that I did not recognize immediately.
So you're telling me you don't recognize Isabella D'Amico? She's been pretty solid filling in for Maddie McKissick. Maddie McKissick, I believe, was in a boot on the sideline. Not sure what's up with that. That is heresy, or not heresy, hearsay. Wow, those are two very different
words. Let's get our pronunciations right.
But yeah, I believe that I saw that happen. I didn't take a note or anything like that watching the game. And Elizabeth Patterson also got in, and that's a very new name for me too. So I'll have to circle back on the scouting report there.
Circle back. Already talking like someone that works in corporate America. Moving on to the ball hit bat sports, because we have a lot of results from those. 7 to actually talk about. Softball went 1-3 versus NC State. They are now 6-14. Not super great. They were also walked off twice in this series. Once on, I think it was Saturday, and then once on Sunday. So I don't know how much more we want to talk about this team, considering the amount that we talked about it last week. So what do you got for me?
Yeah. I mean, you got to close out games. They've gotten really close in a lot of these games. They're 1 for their last 12, right? Or is it 1 for their last 14? I don't know off the top of my head.
1 for their last 14, yes.
Okay. Sorry,
because they did end the losing streak.
Yes.
in Raleigh. There is that.
But they've both gotten unlucky and fallen victim to inconsistent hitting and inconsistent pitching. And, you have an opportunity to regroup this coming weekend against Pitt, who is typically not one of the powerhouses of the ACC.
Oh, buddy, you got to be Pitt.
Yeah.
Oh, buddy, you got to sweep Pitt.
How do I want to put this? I expected the rebound to come against Miami and Georgia State, Miami of Ohio, that is. The Miami of Ohio, Georgia State Kennesaw that weekend, but it didn't. And we played Georgia State opening weekend. So yeah, that was
you're talking about Miami and just Kennesaw, which
it's been a long
point
week.
Stands.
Yeah,
point stands. You'd expect those to be the cheap wins that you pick up, but here we are.
Yeah. And other than that, for a team that came out of the gate hot, we know they can do it. But something declicked, and it's got to click back if they want to, claw back to 500 or contention.
Does the ME 2110 in you see the need for some WD-40 for this team?
I was more thinking drawer slides would do it, but
I don't get that reference, so I'm still
is the
lost in the
layers
woods
of
here.
mechanical engineer too deep on that?
Too many. You went with too esoteric of a reference.
As happens to me quite often. I should learn.
Maybe. All right, let's talk about the Monstars that sucked away softball's Luck Powers baseball, who did suffer a not so great loss versus Georgia State in the midweek, but then came back to take the series over Louisville 2-1, including another nasty loss on Friday, but then they won Saturday and Sunday in big bombastic ways. Here's my very high level, don't really understand baseball take. Pitching, again, questionable. I've now said this 3 weeks in a row. Nothing has really changed. Hitting, much better. Much better in those 2 games, in the last 2 games, rather than the first 2 games. You can kind of see a pretty clear juxtaposition. The first 2 games were very bad. Very, very bad. What were your takes from this weekend or even this week in baseball?
Yeah. Well, the first and foremost, most pressing in my still a student narrow worldview is that the student ticket policy is still a little bit wonky. But I did watch a game and a half, including one from outside the right field fence today. So I got to know the Louisville bullpen pretty well. And so did the Georgia Tech bats, quite frankly, because they did
Oof,
a good
that's
job
a good.
Right. I've been sitting on that all afternoon.
I should have let you finish, but good work.
Yeah. They chased early. They chased the starters early yesterday and today, and I think that just goes to show that the Georgia Tech baseball team can, if they are so darned enough, out hit basically anybody in the league. And that goes. I don't know who had this team at number 1 because it definitely wasn't D1 baseball.
Perfect game.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. But yeah, no, wasn't D1 or NCBWA, but they are a very well-regarded top 10 team. They were picked to win the ACC, and we lit them up for 32 runs in the last 16 innings. That is quite excellent. It doesn't necessarily excuse, in my opinion, the pitching struggles. Some of that is due to, there was a call or two on the field that made me go, huh. There was a play or two in the field that made me go, huh. So it's not all squarely
a couple of weird bounces of baseballs under gloves, a couple of defensive mistakes, a lot. Again, the pitching performances were hit or miss. That, no pun intended.
Andy Archer looked good, though. Andy Archer had his best start of the season, I think, on Saturday.
He's also only had 3 starts, so sample size low, but I understand your point. He did look good. I think Crawford early today also looked good. Herter got batted around. He got really badly hurt in that Friday game. Pun definitely intended. It's the bullpen that makes me more concerned because someone said it best in the writer's room. It's like, this is very vintage Georgia Tech, where you just sort of have to, where this team has just sort of had to mash and pray. And I liked being in a more secure position like we were in 2019, where, we could sort of do the mash and pray stuff, but you knew that the top line starters and then the closers were both solid. And that at least gave you some confidence going into either close games or games that were frankly finished, because even as we saw today, heading into the 8th and 9th innings, things got a little testy, despite Tech being up by 5 or 6 runs.
Well, I think you have to frame it like this. Yes, we have seen Andy Archer and Brant Herter in the past. Have they been weekend starters in the past? And yes, last
One
year.
of them
Sort of.
has, yes.
Yes, last year sort of, and obviously Court Rodig's been around for a hot minute now. But most of our pitching staff only got this far into the season last year. And if you look at 2019, Tristan English is gone. Connor Thomas is gone. Jonathan Hughes is gone. Xavier Curry is gone. And yes, you can nitpick. You can probably add more names to that list that I'm just not remembering off the top of my head. And you can nitpick what I just said to death. But that is our ace, our Friday starter, and our shutdown closer. Like the to expect to lose that dearth of pitching talent to go through 20 games tops last year, and to be to the point where they're finally getting some steady, reliable outings now. Andy Archer got better against a very good team last week and a great team this week. Like, yes, it's inconsistent. Yes, control is an issue. But these guys are still really green, especially in their current roles, I think. So, I mean, it doesn't excuse everything, and I know that I'm arguing against a lot of stuff that I say in the moment, but I think this perspective is important too.
Fair enough. Fair enough. A couple of other notes. Court Rodig did start the midweek. He did not get very far versus Georgia State. I think he got a third of an inning in. I think that midweek starter position is still kind of up for debate. I know we have a couple guys injured that we've been really wanting to see. So we're just going to have to wait on that. There is no midweek this week, so it does give everyone some time to rest. We did have a couple injuries here and there during the course of this series. I know Austin Wilhite is still recovering from what looked like, I don't know, either a very serious cut on the bridge of his nose or a broken nose. I still really haven't figured out what happened on, I guess this was Saturday, in that collision on the second base line, or I guess in between first and second base. So we'll kind of figure that out there. The last thing I guess I wanted to say is Zach Maxwell, when he's on, he's absolutely on. Like, they were talking him up as like this big hunk of sugar that can throw 100 miles per hour on the broadcast, right? But
Yep.
Again, it's those control issues that we saw early last season and have come to roost again that makes me sort of worried that when he's in that setup guy slot in the way that we've constructed this pitching staff.
Yeah.
He ended up getting the strikeout to end the eighth, but he had gotten himself into a lot of trouble. And so I want to see him take that next step and sort of rein in those control issues moving forward.
Yeah. Maybe it's a 1 inning versus 2 inning thing. I don't know. But I agree on that as well. But again, he was a freshman last year. So this is, I guess it would be the second quarter, the end of the second quarter of his first total season, if that makes sense.
It's halftime on his season is what you're saying?
Yeah. It takes time for these guys to grow. That's why nobody is allowed to get drafted after or before having.
Let me tell
3 years on the flat.
Zach Maxwell does not need any more time to grow. Have you seen that man?
I did see that he smashed a countertop. So yes, I would say yes.
Is he like, what was it, 6'6", 270? Question mark?
I don't know,
linebacker sized.
but this was a great quote. Like, mass means gas. To paraphrase it,
I feel like that was originally about Bartolo. It had to have originally been about Bartolo Colon.
I don't know. Did Bartolo ever throw gas? I never.
I don't want to go look up Bartolo's pitching speeds.
Bartolo.
Oh my God, he's looking them up.
Max pitch speed. His max speed on his four seam was a 96.7 with an average of 94.5.
That's not terrible.
No, not at all. But I mean, it's no 98. So
it's certainly not gas, is what I would say.
It's gas adjacent.
Fine. It's natural gas. No, it's solar. It's solar.
It's ethanol.
Fine. Ethanol is better. God, oh, damn it. Why didn't I think of that?
I don't know, sir. I don't know.
I'm not a propellant expert. Anyway, anything else before we sign off for the night?
Nah, I gotta go hit the sack. It's already 9:30 p.m. So
God, you are an old man. But listeners, thank you for listening. We'll let Jake go to bed, and we will all talk to you again very, very soon.